Good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to have you join this interesting conversation about a really important area across the water industry here in Australia and globally. Thanks for joining today's webinar hosted by Iota. We've had over 200 people subscribe to this event, which reinforces the interest and importance of today's topic around using customer leak notification to support customers and conserve water. This session will be recorded and the link will be sent out at the end. So feel free to share with colleagues and others across the water industry who couldn't join us today. My name is David Mason, Customer Director at Iota, and I'll be your facilitator for today's session. I'm joined by Bronwyn Fox from Unity Water, Damien Bell from Sydney Water, and Francis Ip and Ash Walsh from Southeast Water. And I'll introduce them more formally shortly. The format for today's webinar will include a short presentation from each of our guests, followed by a Q&A forum and the opportunity for you all to interact with our panel of experts. So I would encourage you all to enter questions via chat, and I'll put our panel under the spotlight to answer as many as we have time for. For the ones we can't get to, we'll follow up, post the webinar and share answers. Before we get started, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. Iota proudly acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live. We pay respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge their songlines, cultural lore, and continuing connection to the land and water. We recognise the value, the rich cultural heritage, and ongoing contributions of the Aboriginal people and communities to our society across Australia. Many water authorities and councils across Australia are involved in rolling out AMI and digital water metering. One of the key drivers behind this is to reduce water demand and loss on the customer side of the water network. A key enabler to achieve this is through proactive customer leak notifications to support customers conserve water and improve customer engagement. Our guest speakers today come well qualified in these areas to share where each of their businesses are at and share their findings so far. Our first presenter is Bronwyn Fox, who is the Metering Services Manager for Unity Water and has been in the utility industry for over 18 years across energy and the water sectors. She has a passion for delivering successful business outcomes through business transformation and optimization projects. And for the last 2.5 years has been extensively involved in Unity Water's smart meter project. She was responsible for delivering the change across the business and transitioning the smart meter project to business as usual. Her team manages current meter services as well as the new operational aspects of smart metering project, including customer side leak management and operational monitoring and maintenance of these new devices. Our second presenter is Damien Bell, and he is the project manager in Sydney Water's digital metering team. He has over 20 years experience delivering software and hardware solutions to the utilities within Australia and Asia, and has only recently crossed over to the utility side. He's part of the team managing the transition of over 1.6 million existing meters to digital meters and maximising the value of the program and data generated for Sydney Water its customers and community. Our final presenters are Francis Ip and Ash Walsh from Southeast Water. Francis is the Process Improvement Manager at Southeast Water and has delivered and coached others to deliver projects in areas ranging from customer service to billing and payments, health and safety, and asset maintenance. Francis has been working in the digital utility team for the last 5 years, helping to adjust and improve Southeast Water's business processes to make use of digital meters and the data they produce for the benefit of customers and the organisation. And finally, Ash Walsh is also part of the digital utility team at Southeast Water, responsible for overseeing the delivery of digital metering customer projects. Ash is the project manager and has experience across multiple roles in the digital metering space since 2018, having designed and led trials, as well as experience within utilities industry across Australia and the UK. Ash is also passionate about ensuring that technology and data delivers excellent outcomes and experience for our customers and staff. So with this as background, I would like to hand over to Bronwyn to start proceedings and hear what she's been working on at Unity Water. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Great, thank you, David. Thank you for the lovely intro. And thank you all for having me here today to share with you Unity Water's journey on the customer side leak notifications. Oh, sorry, already going too fast. Okay, so just a bit of background for Unity Water. Unity Water's latest smart meter trial kicked off with the rollout of 10,500 devices in April 2021. And this included a mix of integrated meters and loggers onto IoT networks in a geographical location on the Sunshine Coast. So we're talking today on customer side leak notifications or customer side leaks. And the goal, this was Unity Water's first use case. And the goal for us is around supporting our customers to reduce bill shock and being able to reduce the notification time from 90 days down to 3. So to do this, we actually introduced a leak tracker, which is a BI report for being able to identify the leaks. And we targeted our leaks at greater than 500 litres a day with a minimum 48 hours of continuous flow through the device. Our approach in addressing and managing customer side leaks was one where we started actually quite a clunky, maybe quite highly manual process at the time. And we used that as a phase approach to managing our customer side leaks with the focus on the highest leaks. And then we made our way down to 500 litres a day. And that is a parameter that we actually maintain to this day. So part of our process, we introduced our customer notifications. We did an A and B message testing, and that was through SMS and email and letters where we needed to. And our A message was around quite a light touch approach around, we noticed a continuous flow through your meter and it's indicating a possible leak at your property, to B message where it was sharing with the customers how much money it's likely to cost them if they don't repair the leak by the time their next bill arrives. So it was almost like a forecasted bill shock that we could share with the customers if they did nothing at the time. So how do we do it? So I mentioned we built a leak tracker. So this is the monitoring of the 10,500 devices. And what I will call out, we've got some numbers here and I won't read through all of those for you. However, this is a 12-month snapshot that I wanted to share with you today. And as you can see from these test results, the B message had more of an impact on the number of leaks that were repaired, or the percentage of leaks that were repaired, as well as the repair time frame. So that's a 12-month snapshot. And from that information, we were able to then adjust our messaging to customers, with most of our customers now receiving that B message. This is what we've achieved in almost 2 years. And as you can see, there's some really great results. We've had over 1,714 leaks repaired and nearly or almost 1.4 million and 286 million litres of water saved, which is a really great result, and we're very proud of that. I don't have the latest numbers. I've got another, the April numbers that are almost out. So I was hoping to share that with you today, but I would suggest they're probably going to be hitting, over that 1.4 million now, and probably closer to that 1,800 customers, I would suggest now, based on our incremental progress that we've made over these 2 years. Where are we going next? So our next steps is around, we're going to ask our customers how that we are doing. We are rolling out a leak survey to the 1,700-ish customers who have received a leak notification, whether they've repaired or not repaired their leak. And it's giving us, to be able to give us some insights as to whether the information we've provided them is relevant and useful. And that's to help us improve as we go along the way. We have notified them by SMS email letters. We have information on our webpage to assist them with identifying and repairing a leak. Have they needed to call the contact centre for support? So we're going to gather all of that information together, which will be great insights. We may then look to modify and tailor our messaging based on those customer segments. So we have a mix of those customers. We have residential, commercials, industrials, multi-residential. So are we getting our message correcting for each of those customer segments, and can we do more for them, which will be great information. We're also looking to run a campaign around whether we're getting our notification parameters correct. So do we have that leak value correct? So we're down to 500 litres a day of a leak rate. Do we want to drop that lower so that we can actually, get more leaks repaired? So we're going to actually test that and measure those results as well, which would be great. Refining the business. So over the last 2 years, we have streamlined our process, and we've done a learning as you go in, adjusting where we needed and continuing with that approach. We will continue that and implement changes based on the learnings to date. And one of the key areas for us is about automation. So that's one of our next steps. And also helping our vulnerable and hardship customers. What can we do to support them that may be different from some of our customer segments? We've started some of those discussions around these options and how we can best support them. So that's a bit about where we are to date. And I might just hand that back to you, David.
Thanks so much, Bronwyn. Some amazing results, I must say. 300 million litres, I noted, and almost $1.4 million saved, and also some great customer engagement and insights. So a fantastic, summary and overview of where you're at on your journey. So well done. I'd now like to introduce Damien from Sydney Water to also share some of the key findings from their initial phase of their digital meter pilot project. So over to you, Damien.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone. So at Sydney Water, we're a number of years into our digital metering program. We're currently completing production pilots and validating core capability, focusing on validating the different operating delivery models and also validating the technologies available. I'm looking at both residential and non-residential solutions. So when we're analysing the CFN process, we determined that leaking services added financial burden to water bills, and customers expressed their interest in services that saved them money. And leaking water services depleted Sydney Water water storage, which is added stress to water security. Trials were performed testing the CFN service with staff trials moving into bigger rollouts in additional Sydney suburbs, chosen to cover differing geographies and socioeconomics. Original trials had 175 customers, rising to 550 for a second trial. And as of April 2023, we have 3,200 customers able to receive a notification. So the hypothesis from the initial staff trials was 7% of participants received a notification. Though in many cases, the leaks were out of sight, out of mind. Most customers were not aware they had a leak as they were ongoing and had become just part of their baseline household consumption. What they did know is upon notification leak, what were they supposed to do next? So they wanted more than just a notification service. Our hunch was that the cost of water is low compared to other bills, so leakage is just generally overlooked. Participants, they're willing to try simple things to resolve, though they're not keen to invest a lot of time and money. They see value in a notification. They would also create a dissatisfaction with the gap of knowing what to do next. In the trials, we saw positive outcomes where proof of concept was able to identify large leaks, and they were rectified with Sydney Water's water fix team. We found that toilet cisterns account for 50% of the leaks. So increasing the trial to 550 properties, we're able to detect 117 continuous flow events with 22 leaks confirmed. Average water saving per customer being around 26 kilolitres, which is a good water saving. A couple of detailed examples being vulnerable customers that are unable to check for leaks due to physical disability. These customers were referred to Sydney Water's water fix team, and they were able to fix the leak for $33, which is a good outcome. And vacant houses simply just not knowing they had a leak. So moving on to where we are now, we have developed a BI dashboard that provides a visual display of the leaks and their categorization. We have 4 categories ranging from a minor flow of under 220 litres to an extremely large flow of 3,000 litres per day. As Bronwyn mentioned, you do have to find the balance of notification. Obviously, you can't go too low just for the sheer numbers you have to manage. So finding the balance is important, and the process, at the moment we're targeting large users. The dashboard sends automatic updates to SharePoint for further processing. So on the screen, we sent an SMS out to the customers notifying of a leak. The thing we want to highlight here is a dollar value. One of the challenges we've found is to gain interest in the customer. The dollar value jumps out. If they see the monetary cost the leak has for them, then they're more willing to take action to resolve the leak. Away from the notifications, so as I said, the customers want to know they've got a leak notification. Well, what now? Sydney Water do offer a number of services. So we have leak detection. So there's a website, there's a page on our website that sort of explains simple leaks where they can self-serve, which is important for the customer to save money. We do also have a water fix residential, which is where a water fix plumber will check your home for leaking taps, discuss repair works and repair if needed. They can also consult on water efficient devices. Moving up to water fix concealed leak, this is sort of a higher office service where specialist plumbers provide full range of leak detection. They check property for obvious leaks, but they also use specialized equipment such as pipe location, acoustic listening, and to find any concealed leaks. So they can simply mark a location, or they can repair leaks as requested. One of the things, as I mentioned, we are moving into the commercial side. Commercial does become more difficult. In many cases, commercial customers, they're operating 24/7, so you can't look for leaks in down periods. For these customers, we developed a program called CENRA, so Customer Engagement and Non-Residential Analytics. So this is a proactive engagement with our customers where we provide weekly consumption reporting. We also have representatives of the business discussing their usage, using particular metadata, baseline and industry level sizes, and from this we provide tailored insights of their usage. We're still at early in this process, so we do plan to get the first reports out in the next couple of weeks. So on the screen, you can see examples of the report we will be sending out to our customers. Lastly, with the new process, there's challenges. Challenges we've found with the continuous flow notification have been gaining customer interest. What's the cost of the leak required for the customer to want to take action? Like I said, they don't want to spend a lot of time and money. Being seen as a scam message, we do use SMS, and some of the feedback we've received recently is the customer didn't want to contact the number in their message because they didn't know what it was. They did appreciate a follow-up call, and so that validated the service we're offering. So. Notification thresholds. What level of leak do we notify customer? 7% of the leaks was the number we used in trials. 7% of 1.6 million is a lot of notifications. It's simply too high that you can't process. The availability of contact data. Many customers don't have a phone number in our system. We have launched our digital customer platform that allows customers to sign up to outage and billing notification services. Hopefully this is going to increase the availability of contact data. Validation of consumption data. So basically, what is the leak versus valid consumption? We're performing ongoing algorithm tuning, but we do currently perform a manual review of data, which is not something that's going to scale. Scalability and product productization. All these processes do eventually become BAU and have to be able to scale over 1 million. So there's many aspects to consider there. Creep factor. How do you create a dialogue without appearing to be invading the privacy? We're starting to get into really low levels of customer usage and water usage, and some might have an issue with doing that. So post notification. So we see, and it comes back to the scam, that we notify a customer of a leak, and importantly, the leak is resolved. We can see from our records that the leak does stop, but we don't receive any feedback from the customer that they took action. So something we need to look at, that how do we get responses? We do follow up with the customer, and we have guidelines on the days to follow up based on the category, but it hasn't been that simple that the customer will notify us upon receipt of a notification. So we're steadily working through these challenges to increase efficiency and value of our CFN offering. With that, thank you.
Thanks very much, Damien. That was really interesting. Some, what stood out to me was some of those key drivers and benefits of what was driving your program around saving dollars, stress on your water supply, and also 26,000 litres per customer saving. That's great headline, but also you raised some really interesting both insights and challenges in terms of what you've been finding along the way and how you're progressing. So yeah, really interesting. Thank you for that. I'd now like to introduce our final presenters for today, Francis and Ash from Southeast Water, to provide some key learnings from their digital utility journey and customer notification pilots that they've been running. Over to you, Ash, to start.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time to join. So I'm going to quickly take you through who Southeast is and also the journey to date. And then Francis is going to take you through the how and the results so far. So like many water utilities, where we're located is just outside of Melbourne, Southeast. We service about 1.8 million people and have just under 90,000 digital meters in the fleet at the moment. And so, like many utilities, where our journey started is, digital meters were starting to become a thing. There was talk about the business case getting stood up, and obviously leaks is a big part of that. And it also helps solve a customer affordability issue to make sure people aren't getting big bills. And so in the early days, it was really, I guess, for Southeast about testing the technology, the telco connectivity, and also making sure that the meters, which is where the continuous flow alarm is generated, is working. What are the parameters? Is it coming through in a way that we can understand? And then from there, as moved into the core capability phase, that's where started to look at the customer notifications. How often, what is the process? There was some good work done with the joint program, which is the 3 Melbourne metros. They did some research and aligned on a customer offering. And in 2020, that's also where automated the leak alert process. So it's been the results that Francis will take you through have started in 2020. And also that's where started tracking the benefits in terms of how much water saved, how much money is saved for customers. And then in the phase we're in now, which is the build and scale phase, really been focusing on enhancing and automating further those leak alerts. So what we have in place now, there's a few manual steps. And so we're really starting to look at, does the people, process, technology and data stand up when you start to get 500,000 meters and then start looking up towards that million mark. And so that's the work we're being done now. And so when we lead into mass rollout, which is looking like 2024, I guess that's where we'll get into everything should be automated. Our processes and tech should stand up to scale. And then I think it'll be really about that continuous improvement cycle where something might, we might have a drought or something might happen kind of at the macro level that impacts the way we need to speak to people about leaks and continuous flow. So I'd expect that, this will be an iterative kind of process forever and it'll change as and when it needs to. But I'll hand over to you, Francis.
Thanks, Ash. And thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to walk you through our process, which is fairly well automated at the moment. It starts with an alarm on the meter when there's a minimum flow of 5 litres per hour detected continuously through a 24-hour period. So our setting is a bit lower than Damien and Bronwyn's ones. We're halfway in between now. We've got a 2-tier system of small and large leaks. So for large leaks, our notifications get sent out on day 1 after the alarm has been triggered. So in practice, this is about a day and a half to 2.5 days after the flow has actually started. For small leaks, it's day 7, and we set up this difference between the timings of large and small to balance between the impact on a customer's bill. So with large ones, we wanted to get the notification out earlier. But for small ones, we want to minimize the false positives that we get, like taps left running, that customers would find out for themselves and be able to turn off pretty easily. So these notifications are sent automatically to customers via SMS if we have a mobile number, email if there's an email, but no mobile, and at last resort by letter. If the flow continues, a second notification is sent 7 days after the first one, so on the 8th or 14th day respectively for large and small leaks. And then a third one, if it's still going on by then, is sent on day 22 or day 28. We also have at the moment an outbound call that's made by our contact centre. They try and call the customer at the second notification stage if there's a big leak. We're trialling moving this outbound call around to make best use of our resources for responses from the customer. So here we've got a couple of examples of how our emails and texts look. So similarly to what Damien and Bronwyn have also mentioned, we do include the size of the leak, and both by volume and by dollars on the first notification to give some urgency to the message. And we have currently set it at an annual number to really try and give a large number for customers to react to. So that's on the left-hand side. You can see that email example of a first notification. And then the second notification example is on the right-hand side. That's a text message. And you can see that that doesn't include as much information. So we didn't want to bombard people with exactly the same wording on every notification. And here's some stats of how we've gotten so far. So we launched in May 2020, and since then we now have almost 90,000 digital meters. Just over 8,000 of those have had leaks. Some of them have had multiple leaks that have resulted in a notification to the customers. And that's about 9% of all of our active meters. This has saved 700 million, more than 700 million litres of drinking water. And we've also got some digital meters on our recycled water network, and that saved about 30 million litres in recycled water. And this has saved our customers over $3 million to date. Typically, that's about $100 saved off the customer's next quarterly bill, but that has actually reached thousands of dollars for some customers. So we feel that so far, so good. It's delivering some value to our customers, but also protecting our environment by saving our water and securing the water for the future. I'll hand back to you, David.
Thanks, Francis. Some, again, really interesting insights from yourself and Ash, in terms of some things to think about in terms of scaling out to 1 million meters or customers. And a really interesting sort of 2 to 3 step process in terms of how you manage those customer notifications. And actually looking for a reaction. So actually putting those figures in a yearly perspective to get a reaction is really, really insightful. And again, some great results at a high level. 10% sort of leakage rate, 700 million litres saved. That's an amazing outcome, and over $3 million saved so far. So again, really, really interesting. So I think, again, thanks to all of our presenters. I'm sure your projects and learnings along the way have prompted many questions. So I'd like to now kick off our Q&A forum. And I'll start with some general questions to all of our speakers. To Bronwyn first, but I'll also open up to others in the panel. How have you approached customer engagement through your digital metering program?
So very early on, we were very open and transparent with our customers when at the beginning of the rollout. So this was another trial that we were going out there with the 10,500. So we did sort of share that with customers up front before we actually rolled anything out. And that way we could manage any questions. We put some FAQs together. We did website updates. So we did a lot of that pre-work, rolled out some comms to share with them what the future benefits we're hoping to deliver and what the trial was about. And then we actually engaged with them when we did put the meter or the logger on at their property. So some of the other areas that we mentioned obviously today was around the customer side leak notifications, and some of our next steps are going to be around sending another set of comms similar to our first one. So reminding customers, yeah, we've done this, we've rolled out those meters, and again, we're talking about our benefits that we're going to be bringing to them in the future. And we have our leak survey that's going out as well, which will gain some insights. And we're hoping to get some, feedback from our customers on how that's all going for them if they've had a leak at their property. So that's some of the comms that we've done as part of the trial.
Great, thanks, Bronwyn. Any others, either from Sydney Water or South East Water, would like to add their views?
The only one I was going to jump in, and it's on a similar.
Thanks,
Dave. It's on a similar piece to Bronwyn in terms of some pieces that we're looking to add around the leak notifications. And so one is around what we call customer onboarding, which is around the exchange and how we get people onboarded onto the digital metering kind of product. And we've just added in a welcome pack for people so they get their meter, and then there's a welcome pack that comes, and as part of that, we're trying to set the expectation with customers around the benefits and also the notifications that we're starting to send, because particularly with kind of all the data privacy and phishing emails and SMSs that are going around, we really want to make sure that customers know what's coming and kind of know what to expect, so it helps with driving down calls, and people can self-service more.
Great, thanks, Ash. We might, unless there's any other comments from Damien or Francis, I don't think there is, can't see hands up. We might move on to the next question, and to Damien and others again, feel free to join in. Question, how do you envisage handling customer notifications as digital meters and their deployment scale? A little bit of some of the insights we got from South East Water, but from a Sydney Water perspective, how are you looking to handle that?
Yeah, so a big thing from our side is automation. As of right now, we are early in the process, so we do have probably more manual intervention than we want. We have a BI dashboard that automatically exports lists of flow notifications, and sends daily emails. But once we get that, we do have a manual process where we have to create spreadsheets of the data to be sent. We do use Whisper. So Whisper allows us to send bulk SMSs, though this is dependent on having the contact data in the system. And we have to manually create the spreadsheet for Whisper. We have recently relaunched our DCP, which is Digital Customer Platform. It's basically our online customer account portal. This is allowing customers to manage their account, and amongst other functions, they can enter contact details and opt into services such as water outage. So we're hoping that's going to sort of engage customers more and allow them to sign up. We also need to tune algorithms. So like I mentioned, the studies, our previous trials, 7% of 1.6 million is simply too much to manage. So we need to make sure that we tune algorithms and we're confident with the leak data they're providing. And we also need to make sure we're set up to manage the processes through BAU and incorporate other departments, contact centers. I know Bronwyn and the South East Water guys will mention the use of contact centers. So need to bring that into the day-to-day processes. And we are going to get eventually some large numbers, and we do need a lot of people to manage. And as the numbers rise, we'll potentially see new ways to increase efficiency of the process.
Great. Thanks, Damien. Anything you'd like to add, Ash or Francis or Bronwyn?
Yeah, sure, I can
Here you go.
add
Thanks,
some things.
Francis. Yeah.
Thanks, David. So as far as the scalability, what we've done some analysis of our case closure rates to date. And so we have the 3 notifications in place that are automated. And what we've found is that our closure rates have been really good. So about 60 to 70% of customers have stopped their leaks after the first notification. And we're getting up to around 96, 99%, depending on the size of the leak, resolving after the 3rd notification. So it's been really successful. And similar to what Damien mentioned, we're looking at some of the smaller type scenarios in tailoring the process now. And we're also looking at the robustness of our systems to deal with a lot more meters and notifications. In particular, that we know it's not a case of if, but when things are going to go wrong, we're going to have systems down. How do we monitor our systems in an automated way so that we know that they've gone down, that notifications have not gone out? How do we recover that at scale, make sure that our customer experience isn't impacted by that? And also from our process and people perspective, the manual parts of our process, we don't want to become something that we're going to have to employ hundreds of extra people to be able to deal with. What Ash and Damien had alluded to previously about scams and phishing, that's one of our challenges, is that we're going to have to try and maintain the rates of our customer responses to our notifications without losing them, because they're getting these unsolicited messages. But so there's going to be a lot more work before we get to the end of all this.
Thanks, Francis. I think we might just move on to the next question. And Francis, I think this one I might start with you, because I know you've had a little bit to do with this particular topic in terms of how South East Water has been using digital metering and data to support some of your hardship customers. So back to you, Francis, to start with.
Sure. Thanks, David. So in terms of this particular initiative, all of our customers have the potential to be in short-term hardship through leaks. So they get a shock of a large bill. Even a typical leak that's been detected by our meters so far, that's in the order of a 30-40% jump in an average owner's bill and about a doubling of a tenant's bill. And that's let alone the leaks that have resulted in thousands of dollars on the next bill. So this initiative really almost eliminates this kind of bill shock and all the emotion and anxiety that it creates. I noticed that one of the questions that have come up, we know that this is actually quite aligned to leak allowances that people apply for in the analog space. So we have seen that there are customers that get thousands of dollars that they need support on. And so this is potentially going to eliminate those sorts of requests. We actually have a dedicated team that looks after our longer term hardship as well as family violence customers. Both this team and currently our quite small digital meter contact team, both of them have access to graphs that show water usage for customers with digital meters. And this data is really helping them to zero in on causes of high usage. So it might be that they've had a leak, or it might just be that there's been a lot more usage than typical on that particular quarter. So they can see patterns coming through in those graphs, and they can talk through these with the customers. So some of the things that people have been able to see, for example, automatic sprinkler systems that have been set up and forgotten about that run at night, and people don't realise that that's happening, and that's using water. And in the analog world, these sorts of conversations actually take a lot more of a general sort of spraying, excuse the pun, of questions, because they don't know where to target those questions to. So now with that extra data, this actually has the added benefit of making those calls shorter as well.
Very interesting. Thanks, Francis. And I might just quickly check, Bronwyn or Damien, did you have anything to add from experiences from a hardship customer perspective in terms of how you're handling it within your business?
For us, so we are quite early on in the journey of looking at how we can best support our hardship customers. Mm-hmm. So we have started the discussions with our hardship team around how we could best do that. So handing off over to them, and they're the experts in that area. So how can we support them in being able to reach out to those customers and put some processes in place to be able to do so. So it's definitely on our radar. We want to do the best we can to support them, and we'll be working over that in the coming weeks.
Great. Thanks for the additional input, Roman. I might just go to our fourth question and maybe direct it to Ash. And I know from a Sydney Water perspective, Damien, you covered this one pretty well, but it'd be good to get some input from Southeast Water in terms of how you're currently handling some of the challenges around actual leak location and fixes.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I guess from some of the customer research that's been done, and also analysis on, so we've done a lot of analysis for the last 12 months around the leak cases and the conversations that our contact centre's been having. And so some of the barriers to entry, I guess, for fixing leaks that we've seen customers is, some of them are obvious and maybe some not so obvious. So probably the most obvious one is, they can't afford to fix the leak. So, we're sending notifications, they understand they've got a leak and they know it. But the trade-off between the $5 a month or whatever it could be a quarter versus an expensive plumber to come out, that's definitely a barrier. The other one is around knowing a plumber that they can call and they can trust and that can get them out, and, is it someone isn't going to come and rip them off? And on the trust element, there's another trust element that, some customers don't trust the data or the digital meter or just us as a, government water utility. And that kind of feeds into the plumbers as well, as kind of trusting the whole data and leak notification process. And so sometimes they can either, ignore it or maybe want to remove the digital meter. And so some of the other things, so when I was, some of the trials I've done, we did some leak audits and we got some people out, and we're currently doing a trial with Priority Plumbing around a virtual leak audit. So what happens is, in the large leak process, the customer gets offered the opportunity to have a virtual leak check with a plumber, and so the plumber on the other end of the line can walk around and have a look at people's cisterns and where leaks may be, and from that, hopefully that identifies it, and then there's a whole piece around, who does that work, and there's a leak report. But I guess in terms of, obvious leaks are easy to find because they're obvious and it sounds obvious, but I guess, when leaks are hidden or they're not easy to find, it's really expensive to get a leak specialist in and come and find it. So I guess some of the things we need to start thinking about is how is affordability around fixing leaks, going to be useful for customers? How do we support them in that trust, that trust element side of things as well?
That's some really interesting insights. Thanks, Ash. And I think, similar, challenges that Damien raised in all their different leak services. So
just to add to that, David, the dollar value, I think the first perception people have is plumbers are expensive. It's going to cost them hundreds of dollars to walk in the door, which, to be honest, it's probably not unreasonable to think. But what we found is 85% of the cases were from a leaking toilet, leaking tap, which is a relatively minor fix, which is where Sydney Water bring in the water fix residential service, that you get a plumber through a utility, it's more, as Ash said, there's a trust level there. So, but the uptake hasn't been very high. Like, I think there's last survey, only 14% of customers were aware of Sydney Water's water fix. So there's an option there, but customers aren't using it.
Sounds like some more work to do in terms of promotion and awareness. So
Correct.
just to close off on this question, Bronwyn, any additional input from your side in terms of practical things that you've identified along the way around the fixed side?
Probably not much to add on that one.
Yeah,
sorry, David.
no, that's okay. No, that's all good. What we might do now is turn to some of the questions from the audience. We've got probably over 15 questions. I've had some support from behind the scenes, prioritizing some of those questions. So I might just open up to the panel. The first question from Bianca from our friends over on the west at Water Corp. The leak savings are really positive from what she's been hearing from each of you. Specifically, what was the uplift from prior to the pilot to during the pilot? I think some of you might have touched upon that, but anyone want to kick off on insights around that? Around specific savings before and after the pilot.
I just think from Sydney Water side, we're quite early in the process here, so we've still got a bit of work to sort of understand the uplift. So
the only thing to add from ours, David, is I guess so from a Southeast Water approach, is the pilot stage, I guess, was just the doing it stage. I guess it was a kind of the confidence in leaks from early conversations with, they're definitely a theme. They're great. Customers are going to love them. So I guess for us, it's kind of been changes along the way over 2 or 3 year periods rather than really set, I guess, stages in terms of the continuous flow. So there's research done up, let's do it. And then we've changed content and changed some of the rules to better fit, I guess, as we've gone along the way. Good.
I hope that helps answer your question, Bianca, behind the scenes. So we might move on to another question, this time from Nish. I know Nish had been involved in digital metering over at Watercare in Auckland. He asks specifically, what are your plans in the ongoing operation and maintenance of these new digital smart meters at scale? Obviously, he thinks it, and I think I agree, it needs an upskilled workforce compared to today's mechanical meters. So would anyone like to provide a comment on that?
I think from my side, there's another element of the meter to fail. We have a metrology side. We also have a communication side. So the potential for failure is higher. You do require a more skillful workforce to be able to troubleshoot a meter issue. You don't want to simply be pulling meters out for minor issues if they can be resolved. Software throws in the element. That's another thing that can go wrong. So yeah, completely agree. You still need your meter exchanges, but you do need probably a high level skilled group to be able to troubleshoot digital meters in the hope to resolve in field as opposed to simply replace. So the teams are going to certainly have to be bigger to manage the operations.
I was expecting Bronwyn to have her hand up, and she has. So over to you, Bronwyn, for a comment as well.
So we're currently doing a lot of, excuse me, we're currently doing a lot of work around our alarm management, which David knows quite well. So operational maintenance, we're really just taking a holistic view around, okay, how is our fleet operating overall? And then tell us a piece of information that says something may be different to that. So that could be an alarm or not communicating for a couple of days and things like that. So what we're doing is looking at a story, pulling a story together there so we can sort of go, okay, in this particular scenario, these types of scenarios, we want to be able to go and do this. So it's kind of that first step around requirements of what we need to do to efficiently be able to identify an issue and resolve it. And yeah, that's a big piece of work that we're currently looking at the moment. Once we get, I guess, some of those learnings, we can then sort of really take those next steps around being able to pass on the knowledge and the education across the rest of the business too. So we're still in trial mode. We're not billing from our data as yet. So we're really putting a lot of effort into making sure we get all of that set up properly.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Ash or Francis, did you want to comment as you start to scale beyond 100,000? Because that starts to become critical in terms of how you're going to handle the device itself.
Sure, David. So we've had alarms and events raised on our meters for quite a while, and we've got an operational team that monitors that and takes action accordingly. So there's been a lot of work over the last couple of years of refining those alarms, how they look, the dashboards, how we can make sense of the data that's coming in. And then, as Nish asked, there is a lot of work that goes on into the operations and maintenance of the meters. It's not just upskilling the workforce. We also potentially have different tools required. And if we do need to replace a digital meter, we need to have the stock available to those that workforce to be able to fix what's going on. So as it currently stands, where we don't have the stock available at the levels that we will need when we get really going. And so if there are problems with meters that we can't resolve on site, then we are at the moment replacing them with analog meters until we get to that point where we can really stabilize that stock level.
Very interesting. And I know from some of the work we've done jointly with South East Water, in terms of just starting to manage some of these alarms at scale, that's where, from a platform perspective, having smart rules to sort of manage some of those rules by exception, or sorry, some of those alarms by exception, so that you're not getting overwhelmed, or your operational staff not getting overwhelmed by nuisance alarms, is going to be key to helping scale this beyond 100,000 and up to 1 million. So really, really interesting point there. We might just move on to another question. I think some of you may have covered it in terms of access to some of this usage data to a portal, but there's a specific question: do customers have access to their consumption data via a portal or app? Did anyone want to put their hand up to comment on that? We've got Ash and Francis. Maybe Ash, do you want to start?
Nice. Yeah, so for us, yes, so there's a customer portal. Everyone can get in there. They can see their different, their usage data down to 30 minutes. And there's also leak alerts that are happening in there as well. And I guess what we're starting to look at now in terms of next steps is how do we make that more insightful for customers? How do we start to drive more self-service around, leaks, and also when we want to introduce some behavior change type initiatives into that customer portal as well, and try to help get people to use less water.
Right. Damien or Bronwyn, where are you guys at with customer portal? Because that's on your to-do list.
It's on our to-do list. It's something we don't have yet for residential customers. We are looking at exported data for commercial, but it's not. It's a future roadmap for residential.
Okay.
For us, we aren't there yet. So we need to consider that as part of our billing aspect. So if we are actually billing, we need to be able to show more in terms of the portal and the usage data and things like that. So we'll start looking at that in the future.
Great, thanks everyone for your input. Might just move on to another question from the audience. With increased awareness of customer leaks, has this resulted in fewer or smaller leak rebates to customers and hence a reduction of non-revenue water? Anyone want to chip in on that one? Francis, you go first.
Thanks, David. I mentioned that earlier about the leak allowances. I think that's the same thing as leak rebates. So we are doing some analysis around the the difference between what's happening on the digital meters versus in the analog world around leak allowances. So far, we seem to be having some reduction, but because we haven't had that many meters in the ground until probably the last few months, it's quite difficult to get that data lined up yet. But that is one of the steps that we're looking at next, is around seeing whether there is that correlation of a drop in leak allowance applications to start off with, let alone whether we're actually granting them when they come in versus the customers that are on analog meters.
Thank you, Francis. Bronwyn or Damien, did you want to add anything? Otherwise, we'll move on to our probably final question for today. No? Okay. I'll just look at one last question. What have we got here coming through? There was a question to Southeast Water. What percentage of leak notifications sent on day one were actually found to be a leak? Or were they all leaks because that was part of the notification process?
Yes, I'll hand to Francis, who knows the intricacies of what happens before the notification. Because what we try before we send the first notification, there's some trickery that happens in the back end system to try and remove those anomalies. Do you want to give any insight, Francis?
So I guess the answer to this particular question is we are not 100% sure. So we are actually triggering the alarm when we've had a continuous flow, basically continuously for at least 24 hours. And as I was saying earlier, that in practice, that's actually about a day and a half to 2.5 days, up to 2.5 days before the notification actually goes out. So there is all of that time for customers to have noticed that there was an issue and to have resolved it before then, but we don't actually have a specific percentage of how many of those were false positives.
Thanks, Francis. It's obviously an art or a science is probably the question there. And the jury's still out. But I think we're almost at time. And I guess in closing, I'd really like to thank everyone for participating in the webinar and submitting all your questions. We've had over 20 questions. We've had over 150 participants of over 200 people that registered. So a fantastic outcome, and hope that you all found it really of value. We'll obviously, as we said earlier, be following up with answers to all your questions. There will be the recording being sent out. Just in closing, I'd like to, a special thanks to our guest panelists and presenters, Bronwyn from Unity Water, Damien from Sydney Water, and Francis and Ash from Southeast Water for shedding light on this really important part of their digital journey and some really tangible outcomes of reducing water loss and I think importantly, improving customer experience. So again, thanks everyone. Hope you've got a lot out of this and look forward to the next webinar that we'll be hosting in a few months' time. But again, just in closing, it's been great timing. Obviously, a lot of you will know that Ozwater's coming up next week. We really look forward to seeing you there on the stand. Invite you all to drop by to our Iota and Southeast Water stand, say hi to the Iota team and hear more about Southeast Water's digital journey. As I said, we'll follow up with an email with both the recording, but also the location of our stand at Ozwater. So on that note, thanks again for your interest and attendance, and stay tuned, as I said, for our next webinar in a few months' time.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.